The music world moves fast. Want to stay up to date on the latest albums and get in-depth examinations with the artists? Check out Consequence of Sound, the podcast. Bite-sized album reviews for the music fan on the go who wants to stay in the know, and much more. Subscribe to the series on iTunes or your favorite podcast provider, and let the writers of Consequence of Sound steer you right. Check it out at consequenceofsound.net/COS podcast. Consequence Podcast Network.
Welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith With. It's an audio interview series presented by WFPK Independent Louisville at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Wherever you're listening from today, would love you to hit the subscribe button so you can keep up with these interviews. I'm Kyle Meredith. Today, my guest is Lenny Kravitz. He's got a brand new record called Raise Vibration that we're going to get into. Talk about how world events and concerns made their way into the lyrics and how Michael Jackson made his appearance on this album as well. There's a song called Johnny Cash. It's got a beautiful, heartbreaking story that ties to the passing of his mother. We get into that. And then we turn the clocks back to 1998 to talk about his album 5. Of course, that spurred the singles Fly Away, and that cover of American Woman had a great futuristic sound and sounds like it's going to get a deluxe edition. Kyle Meredith with Lenny Kravitz.
Great, thank you.
I thought I'd actually say hello from Louisville. I know you're a big Muhammad Ali fan, and birth of him and final resting place. I just saw this. You've got like quite a bit of his memorabilia, don't you?
Yeah, I do. He's just an amazing human being, and sports was his vehicle, but he was so much bigger than that.
Well, I'm really excited about the new record, Raise Vibration, and everything we've heard from it so far. But I wanted to start with that first single that we heard because it kind of, sort of segs away from, what Muhammad Ali is out there teaching and everything, but It's Enough is quite the epic and sort of tackles a lot of ground, doesn't it?
I mean, yeah, it's a reflection of, what's going on in our world right now. And we're living in some very interesting and challenging times. We're at a lot of crossroads in different categories. And these are things that I think about. I think so many of us think about the state of affairs, and, the way we're dealing with ourselves, the way we're dealing with each other, the way we're dealing with this planet that we were given, how our governments are operating, what's important to us, and what is important to us in so many cases is counterproductive to our state of mind, peace, unity, sustainability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's just posing the questions and just saying that, it's enough. This behavior, this path we're taking is enough, and there's a better way.
You start your career with a song like Let Love Rule, and that becomes a great theme that you've had throughout your albums. In 2008, you asked for a love revolution, and I feel like 10 years later, do we need it now more than ever? Do you find that becomes a plea or a prayer at some point?
Absolutely. It's always the answer. No matter what the question is, no matter what year it is, it's always the answer. Because when you love like that, you're working in that consciousness, and you're not operating from ego and the desire for power and control and let love rule and love and all of these things that everyone's been saying that has said it, whether you're Martin Luther King or you're Marvin Gaye or you're Bob Marley or you're John Lennon or you're myself or whoever you may be, whoever's said it and whoever believes in those values, it's always it's funny. You listen to something like I heard the other day, "What's Going On" by Marvin Gaye, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds like it was written yesterday. The same issues, the same things, and here we are in 2018, and we're still trying to figure it out.
And I guess that's, part of that question, too, is like, when does a prayer become a plea, almost in desperation? Because you still sound like optimistic to a point. You sound like a glass half full, like, we're not doomed.
I mean, I'm always going to remain optimistic, and I was raised that way. I was taught that way of thinking by my grandfather and my mother, and I had very positive people around me growing up, my family, and people that operated on this vibration, people that no matter how bad things were, chose to remain optimistic. So I've sort of been bred to think that way, and I'm glad that I was. But, time is of the essence. I mean, there are some things that we can fix, but there's some things that maybe we cannot. Maybe we're too late for certain things, and we're going to have to learn by, what did Bob Marley say? Total destruction, only solution. Right. I hope not. Right. But it seems that as human beings, we don't learn from our past in the way that we should, and we don't collectively change to change the situation. And we might have to face some destruction. But I will always remain optimistic and always believe that there's a way out. I can't help it,
Splitting your time, your homes, I think I read that you have one in Paris and the Bahamas, and I'm sure you're in the States a lot. I mean, does that give you a sense of, I think humanity is too broad in the question here, but, the differences in culture and sort of the similarities as well of how this is all going? Because a lot of us, we're just kind of trapped in an American bubble, and we see the news and we can watch the BBC or whatever, but we're still getting one-sided, and I feel like maybe that gives you a different sense of what's really happening globally.
I think travel is very important. I wish every person could travel and leave the place that they're from and go see other places and other cultures. I never learned so much until I started touring and went around the world, and that opened up everything. And you have a lot of people here in this country or any country they may happen to be from, where they think what they're experiencing is the center of the universe, and there's just so much more. So, being in different places and traveling is essential to learning and to opening yourself up.
I'll jump to some of the I don't know if I would say lighter fare of the record, because Low definitely has its own dark side in it, I think, as well. But when you first hear that, I think everybody said, "Oh, that's cool," kind of a Michael Jackson influence. But we're told now that is that actually Michael in the song?
That is Michael, yeah.
How did that happen?
It's something that we did, a couple years before he died, and I wrote and produced a song for Michael that came out on the Michael album after he passed, but it's something that we had done in the studio, and it was an honor to have him on the track. And I didn't say featuring Michael Jackson, and I didn't, I just wanted it to be done in a classy way. It wasn't about exploiting him, and that's why I just, he's just giving the sort of exclamation to what I'm saying with his shouts and screams, and it's done in a very subtle way, but very powerful. But it's funny, people say, "Oh, you sound like Michael Jackson, you're doing that." And I said, no, I'm not trying to do anything.
Well, it's got to be so cool, though, because, with what, Jackson 5, I think, was your first concert, and then to have that come back around like that, that's got to be great.
Well, the fact that I got to work with him and was amazing, and that we got to know each other a little bit was amazing. And, you come full circle, I mean, I wouldn't be standing in front of him if it wasn't for him. Right. So it's a beautiful thing,
Yeah. Bringing up another legend, you've got a song on here called Johnny Cash. Is there a story that goes along with that?
It's not about Johnny Cash per se, but he's involved. And basically, I'm singing to somebody, telling them that I need comfort and that, I don't want to live without them. And I'm referring the feeling that I'm looking for from this person is a feeling that I had from Johnny Cash, sort of. I got to tell the whole story, else you won't really get it. But basically, when my mom was dying of cancer, I had just gotten home from a Japanese tour, and she actually died a day later. But I went straight from the airport to the hospital, and I was at the hospital all day, and I then went home to take a shower and get something to eat. And my mom died in the time that I was driving from the hospital to the house I was staying at. And the house that I was living in was the house of Rick Rubin, the producer, who is my friend, and that's the house I lived in when I was in L.A. for many, many years. He was very sweet and gave me a room in his house, and that's where I lived when I was in L.A. at that time, Johnny Cash was also living at that house because they were making the album, that acoustic album. So Johnny and I were flatmates, in essence, and his wife June. And so I walked into the house and I got the phone call that my mom had passed. And I was just standing at the bottom of the stairs for a moment, just taking it in. I knew she was going, but I didn't know it was going to be, today, that day. And Johnny and June were coming down the stairs, and they saw me. I guess, they saw that something was wrong with me. And Johnny said, "Hey, how you doing? What's going on?" And I said, "Man, my mom just died." And the two of them just grabbed me and held me, and and we weren't close like that. We were, we passed each other in the house. How you doing? Good morning, hello. But this was like a moment where they just were so human and so loving and so supportive, and they held me and they were just saying things to me and comforting me, and it was beautiful. So somehow when I wrote this song, it was so strange when it was coming out. I'm saying to this person that I'm singing to, I'm saying, just hold me like Johnny Cash when I lost my mother, whisper in my ear just like June Carter. And that's sort of the vibe of the song. But it was funny because when I was writing it, all I kept saying was Johnny Cash. And I was like, why am I writing a song about Johnny Cash? Because all the lyrics hadn't come out yet, but I kept hearing the Johnny Cash part. And then as the lyrics sort of just came out of me in the stream of consciousness, it really kind of blew my mind that this moment was so monumental for me and something that remained in my heart and in my subconscious. And it came out in that way that I'm actually talking to somebody else saying that I need this comfort. I need it to be like this comfort that I had at that time, because it was probably the last time that I was comforted in such a deep and meaningful way.
I'll seg a little bit clumsily here out of something as beautiful as that, because what I'm always impressed by is that you are such a fan, and you talk about your heroes.
Absolutely.
And, it's fun because you're one of our heroes, and we get to kind of see that side of it, like, of you waving those flags too. I know Prince was a big hero. Not long ago, I was sitting with Gary Clark Jr., who I know you know really well as well. And we were talking about the greatest living guitarist, and both of us, without taking a breath, said Prince, just in unison right there. And I thought you've probably got you may have an opinion on that statement as well. But though Prince is gone now, maybe now who is the greatest living guitarist? Who does that leave?
Wow. Well, yes, Prince definitely was, no doubt. And, you talk about being fans, Prince was a huge fan. I mean, when we used to hang out, we would talk about all of our heroes, and Sly and Larry Graham and this one and that one. And, so we're all fans, man. When I'm with Steven Tyler, we fan out and talk about all of our influences and who we love and what records turn us on. And it's great, I mean, that's, I never want to lose that, I'll always be that. I'll always be that, 12-year-old kid in my bedroom listening to records, I'll always be that guy. I have to say, my favorite living guitarist is Craig Ross, my lead guitarist. He is such a legend, and those that know, like Prince knew.
Yeah.
Prince loved Craig. Like, he used to come to the shows, and he would, talk to Craig, and he'd watch Craig, and he was like, he knew Craig was a monster of a guitar player. Jimmy Page knows, but Craig Ross is my favorite living guitarist. He is amazing, and the work that he's done with me for the last, 9 years is just amazing. And one of the reasons is because he's just so versatile. He can play any style authentically, and he's got his own sound. So yeah.
You mentioned being 12 years old, listening to those records and everything, and I thought I was probably 12 or 13 when Are You Gonna Go My Way came out, and I'm 36 now, so I'm not done the exact math on that, but I know that's celebrating the big 25th anniversary, and then I had a big coming of age year in '98, and I looked at that, and 5 turns 20 years old.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, and that was such a great record. I thought I'd close out. Yeah, I thought I'd close out by asking about that one too, because 5 was such a cool record in that it sort of was. It sounded to me very futuristic when it came out. Like, even now when I listen to Black Velveteen, and it's got that 21st century line in it and everything, and that music, was that something that you were striving for back then, to kind of that what does the next century sound like type of sound?
it just kind of happened. It was like I was, I'm a big analog guy, and I still am. But at that point, I started to experiment, and I got into using different sounds and different ways of recording, and got into Pro Tools and blah blah blah. But it just kind of happened. It was kind of a reaction, I think, to doing all this really straight old school analog recording, and then I just needed to like break away from that for a moment, But it's funny because so many people say that, and I didn't even think of it in that way. I was just making music, but so many people have told me how they feel about that record and say the same thing that you said, So I guess there's something to it.
I know the albums before have had the deluxe edition. Do you guys ever talk about doing one with that one? I mean, that ended up being what a huge record because of Fly Away and, of course, the inclusion later on of American Woman. It started your Grammy run.
We'll do it. We're gonna do it. We are gonna do it. We're doing a bunch of them right now. So yeah, that will definitely happen.
Yeah. Is there a lot left over from that record? Because I was always surprised how much there was left over on the other records too.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much stuff it's. I don't really remember. It may not be too much stuff, but I have to check the vault. But sometimes I had a bunch of extra stuff, and sometimes I just made the albums, and that was that, So I'll have to see. Yeah, but we're definitely going to do a deluxe edition, and that'll be fun.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to that. And Lenny, I thank you, especially talking about this new record, Raise Vibration. Thank you for continuing to do what you do. I should also mention here at the end of the interview, you're going to be in Louisville. You're playing the Bourbon and Beyond Festival, so we're going to see you at the end of September.
Great. Look forward to it.
All right, Lenny. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, man.
All right, bye. Hey, big thanks to my guest, Lenny Kravitz. Again, that new record is called Raise Vibration. Hey, don't forget, wherever you're listening from today, to hit that subscribe button right now. And if you're checking out the podcast, whether it's iTunes or Podchaser, wherever you're getting it from, subscribe there, and then go ahead and give it a rating. Leave a review if you feel so inspired. Then you can head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show every Monday through Thursday from noon to 3 Eastern. You'll also find some bonus episodes of this series over there as well. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.